Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Legal Insights session run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session is session 2 and follows on from our last week's session, which actually started the overview of the governance, risk and compliance obligations for not-for-profit agencies. Today's session focuses on the governance standards, and we will be looking at cyber security requirements and also providing you, as part of this, access to policy documents and also other legal resources for you to be able to use within your agency. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded up to the question and answer part of the session, we do pay our respects to the elders past and present. So today's agenda is looking at governance standards. Now, when we talk of governance standards, there are a number of key requirements that agencies do need to consider. Now, one of those standards is on actually cybersecurity. And we ran a session last year, a number of sessions last year, just before all of the number of cyber attacks that we saw across Optus and Medibank and a whole range of other issues that actually occurred late last year. So it was actually timely that we look at this. Now, one of the big issues that agencies have when we talk of governance standards and things like cybersecurity topics is, what do we actually need to do? How do governance standards relate to us measuring cybersecurity requirements within not-for-profit agencies? Well, one of the things that we do have for you is checklists that you can use, and I will jump into those right now. I'll just show you what we've got. The outcomes of the recommendations of what we're making for today's session is to have a look at the governance standards, look at the self-assessment tool and resources, and also access the legal templates that we've got. Now, with this, these are real documents that I will show you. Just to jump straight into it, you can and you all should have access to your own compliance dashboard. If I just bring up the online portal, this is our Kaizen website. You can go through to the Gemba 360 and click on here to access the Gemba portal. Now, once you do log in, you'll access the screen. You will see this. You all do have access to this. And when you log in, what you will see is this screen here. And the self-assessment checklist that I will be talking about today is located under the governance, risk, and legal compliance section. You can click on add a new entry, and you've got the requirements under cybersecurity you can see here, and we will go through these shortly with you as well too, of what these actually mean. These other sections, financial abuse, working with partners, we will be covering off in the upcoming weeks. But this essentially summarizes your legal compliance or governance, risk and legal compliance obligations that your agencies do need to follow. And it is available in your portal to be able to access. The other document that we also have for you is a template policy that your agency can use. It is a Word document, and this is found in your Gemba docs. Now, with it, these templates are there for you to be able to use. The reason that we're supplying all of these for you is so that you have a line in the sand of going, well, look, we might have our own policy document, or we might need something new. What are the requirements that our agency needs to look at? Well, we've summarized the cybersecurity standards here, and also what your agency does need to meet in terms, I'll say, of its minimum requirements as well too. So that's where we're heading with today's session. All of these will be made available to you after today's session, including a copy of this webinar, which will also be available to all attendees. So we've covered off the legal resources. I've shown you the Gemba dashboard. That's part of our governance, risk and compliance portal. It is available as a single seat for your agency to look at. So today's agenda. Let's have a look at the governance standards of what your agency does need to meet. Now, as I mentioned just briefly last week, when looking at all of these requirements of the governance standards, we look at things like the legislation, ministerial orders, regulators, policy directives, and what the quality standards are. Essentially, this feeds into creating those template checklists for you, and some of the regulators that we spoke about last week includes some of these here. Now, when we're looking at the governance standards, we are focusing on the ACNC, ASIC, and OREC. And there are a range of different tools that those regulators do put out. This webinar that we are running is not affiliated with any regulators. We do use and reference some of the specific checklist tools that they do use, and it is available in terms of what they need and what your obligations actually are. The problem is that they all often don't speak to each other, and you're left to try and work out, well, what does this mean for my agency? So essentially, just to show you in terms of how we've set this up, the policies and checklists, which is some of the tools that I'm showing you today, brings all of your governance, risk, and compliance obligations together, so that way you've got a single source of truth to be able to make these assessments. Now, when we talk of some of the governance standards, what we're actually seeing here is there are 6 standards that your agency needs to meet. One of these is the purpose and not-for-profit nature, being that a charity must be of a not-for-profit and work towards its charitable purpose. You must also be accountable to members, and a charity that has members must take reasonable steps to be accountable to its members and provide them with adequate opportunity to raise concern. There's a standard 3 which talks about compliance with Australian laws, and a charity must not commit a serious offence such as fraud under any Australian law, and also you must meet your compliance obligations, your legal compliance obligations as well too. You must have suitable persons to manage your charity, and there are duties of responsible people that make sure that they undertake and discharge their duties for your agency in a fair and equitable way. Now, there is also the standard 6, which talks about maintaining public trust and confidence in the not-for-profit sector. Now, one of the key areas that often people miss coming out of it is that there are key governance reporting obligations. If you go onto websites like the ACNC, for example, you'll find that there are toolkits that they have, and it covers key topic areas. These are the key topics that we're going to expand upon in the upcoming weeks. These include financial abuse. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity today, working with partners, and safeguarding vulnerable people as well. Now, there are resources to manage risks, but again, the question that agencies have is, okay, from a risk management approach, if I'm going to look at managing the risks, for example, in cybersecurity, what on earth does this mean? What do I actually need to do? We are going to jump financial abuse, and we're going to focus on cybersecurity today. Now, if you go onto the requirements of what cybersecurity standards meet for the agencies like yourselves, it says this. It says, all charities are vulnerable to cybersecurity risks, including unauthorized access to information, hacking, data breaches, viruses, and phishing. Recognizing issues of cybersecurity and how they affect operations is crucial for all charities. It is just as important that charities know how to best mitigate the risks of cybersecurity and can address issues that arise. So that's the obligation. Now, for most of you, and I look at this and go, well, what on earth does this actually mean if I was within a not-for-profit agencies? I'm aware of the vulnerability. I'm aware of issues, of recognizing issues, but what do I actually need to do in terms of meeting these specific requirements? Well, this is where the self-assessment tool comes in. Now, what we have looked at, and I'm just going to jump back to the dashboard. Here we go here. Now, when you log in via the dashboard, I can see there's a couple of questions coming in. You can log in by going to gemba360.com, and you've got access already. If you don't, you can email us and we'll get that sorted after today's webinar. Now, you can log in and let's go to the governance, risk and legal compliance form. Now, when I click on this, it'll open it up into this screen here. And you can see this, and I'm just going to simply click on add a new entry. Now, what we have done, and we're going to work through this over the next week, next couple of weeks actually, is each of these topic areas. One of these is cybersecurity. What we have done quite openly is take the information off the different regulator sites, one of those being the ACNC. We've also looked at ASIC. We've also looked at the regulator for IT services as well too, and looked at spam acts as well too, and other IT legislation that you need to consider. Now, the first criteria that you can see here is to say that, and this again is under the governance toolkit that your agencies must follow, is that the requirement is that your agency must have clear policies, guidelines, or procedures for collecting and handling information. Now, you might mark this as yes, you do it. But again, the question then comes out for all of these questions. Well, what are the requirements that I need to then meet in terms of actually looking at, well, where is the line in the sand for this? Well, what we have done for you is put together a policy template, and here it is here. What we cover off quite simply is a number of key areas, and I'll just walk you through this. Here's the policy template that you can see. Now, it is a Word document. It allows you to essentially go in and actually edit it. You can see that we've got my agency at the top. You can simply search and replace this with your own document as well too. And this is located in the GembaDocs side of the screen for you to be able to access. Now, what have we done here for you to make things easier? Well, we've actually gone through, had a look at each of the specific requirements that you need to meet. So, has clear policies, guidelines, and procedures for cybersecurity issues. Now, what does that mean from a legal compliance point of view? Well, essentially, first of all, that the idea is that this policy should cover your employees, contractors, and volunteers, and who has permanent or temporary access to your system and hardware. What is the definition of confidential information, and what are you trying to do in protecting your individual devices as well? We've also looked at emails, we've looked at passwords as well too, and what the requirements are. Importantly, what we've also added in here is about document retention. Now, document retention is an important area, and I'm just going to highlight this here for you to look at. So we've actually covered it off for Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia, Tasmania, Western Australia, and WA as well too. So all of the states, including South Australia, is also covered, and I can see a few questions coming through. Why we cover document retention in here is that in some states like Victoria, document retention actually covers documents that may be used in litigation sometime in the future. And what I mean by that is it may not actually be a document that you need to consider now. It's actually, I'm going to say, irresponsible or criminal to actually destroy, conceal, or render illegible a document that might be used in litigation in the future. So there is a high watermark in some states of actually maintaining documentation within your agency. And of course, documentation includes information that is actually on your IT system as well too. So there are specific sections across the cybersecurity policy in terms of signatures, use, authority, and also access to your information of what the minimum requirement is in terms of maintaining a cyber security policy, as well as updating things like antivirus softwares and whose responsibility it should be for it. As I said, it is a document that we've set up that is a template document for your agency to use. What we've also looked at is things like, does your agency arrange training for staff and volunteers? Is this important? Who should actually do it? Do you have a clear plan for responding to data breaches as well too? What is your process for regularly updating antivirus software? What is your backup information? And do you seek help from cybersecurity experts as required when you need to? So each one of these, essentially, you should be able to mark yes for all of these. If you can't, and you may mark no at the moment, then you can actually write notes in here and say, we are reviewing our governance policies. Let me just mark this in with the policy template and self-assessment tool. Now, the good thing about using this tool that I'm just showing you here allows you to keep track of what you've actually done and when, and also who's actually done it as well. So I've actually started this, and once you've done it, you can simply save it down the bottom. Once you've actually done it, what you will see is that it'll return you to this screen and it'll give you the date and the time when it was last updated. Now, I didn't save this one, but I've actually just saved the previous one that I've been working on. Of course, the good thing about this from a documentation point of view is that you can always go back and actually see who's done what and when within your agency. So as you're going through, it'll actually keep logs of when you've actually made changes, what you've updated as well too, and gives you an idea of how you can actually start to manage all of your governance, risk, and compliance reporting in one screen. One of the things that we do find with agencies when we talk of governance standards and the like is often they'll say, where is the line in the sand that we need to meet? How much do we actually need to actually look at this when we're actually managing these requirements? The governance standards that I'm talking to you about here, thanks, Maureen. I can see a question just coming through, which I will come to, is that in terms of looking at your standards that you need to meet here, is also looking at, well, what are the governance areas that we need to focus on immediately to get under control within the first part of this year. So we will be looking at financial abuse. Today we're looking at cybersecurity, and we will also be looking at with partners and also safeguarding vulnerable people, which does include things like the child safe requirements as well too. So Maureen has just asked, our meetings are recorded, so we don't have much documentation. With it, Maureen, it's with the recording of meetings as well too, it's about what are the outcomes that you might have in terms of documenting some of your meetings that you'll have within your agency. So it's not only just about recording the meetings that you might have as well too, it's also looking at, well, what is the actual outcomes that you might have with those requirements as well. So over the next few weeks, we will be looking at other specific requirements, safeguarding, and also working with partner agencies as well too, and also bringing it back in terms of the employer work tool and checklists as well. We do recommend that you do look at the governance risk and legal compliance tool found on your Jemba dashboard. It is a self-assessment tool along with the policy document, which will give you the minimum requirements that you need to meet in terms of your governance risk and meeting your cyber security obligations as well. With that said, our recommendations, just to reply back to or revert back to the start of this session, was to look at the governance standards, including these slides, which we will send out today. Access your Jemba dashboard and conduct the self-assessment tool. If you do have any questions, you will find that there is a chat bar on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that you can use, and it is there for yourselves to be able to access. Access the cybersecurity policy, which will also be circulated around, and you will have access to that today. And of course, if you do have any questions, then please reach out to us directly. You have my mobile here, which is 0413 699 515, or you can email us or call us directly here as well too. If there are any questions, we're more than happy to stay online and answer these as we move through. If you are watching this recording after today's live session, then by all means, please contact us on 1300 360 360 or email us at support@jemba360.com.